Johnny Depp has been in the public spotlight for over 30 years, an A-list celebrity who at one point was the highest paid movie actor in history. His list of acting credits is long, but on the top is his portrayal of Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean series of movies. This role made him lots of money and exposed him to a whole new legion of fans. Johnny Depp met fellow actor Amber Heard when they shot a movie together in Puerto Rico called The Rum Diary. They fell in love while on the road promoting the movie and entered into a dysfunctional, tumultuous marriage that ended quickly. But after their final divorce settlement agreement, Amber wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post talking about being a victim of domestic violence. This op-ed was the reason Johnny sued Amber for defamation. It was a case that many thought was impossible to win. A public figure suing for defamation in the United States is not the type of case that is considered winnable. But as the world watched, Johnny did win, not only inside the courtroom, but in the court of public opinion. How did he do it? Tonight, we get in-depth insight into the trial of the year as Camille Vasquez and other members of Johnny's legal team speak with Court TV's Chanley Painter. And Johnny's lead attorney, Ben Chu, joins us live. For the next hour, we go behind the scenes in part one of our special look at Johnny Depp's legal team. Hi, I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. This is a special hour here on Closing Arguments, part one of our two-part special, taking a look at the trial of the year, the decade, I think really the trial of this century. Anyhow, when we think of legal teams, the first one that comes to mind for me was O.J. Simpson's so-called dream team that seemed to win a case that many thought couldn't be won. O.J. Simpson accused of double murder. There was the car chase. Everything was pointing towards O.J. Simpson is a double murderer. O.J. Simpson is going to go to prison for the rest of his life. At the end of the day, that dream team of lawyers convinced the jury that there was reasonable doubt, and O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. And that was quite an accomplishment. And for Johnny Cochran and everyone else who was a member of that team, it was a big, big deal. Really big deal. But I want to compare what they did with what Johnny Depp was up against, because Johnny Depp's trial is different. It wasn't a criminal case, it's a defamation case, which is different. In a criminal trial, to win as a defense attorney, you just have to raise a reasonable doubt. And no offense to criminal defense attorneys out there, but prosecutors are the ones who have to prove something. And it's an enormous burden beyond any and all reasonable doubt. Defense attorneys like the Dream Team just have to convince the jury that there is some reasonable doubt, and they win the case. You bring a defamation case, it's different. The burden's on you. You now have to prove it. It's not that you're just trying to show that they can't prove it. You have to prove it. And when you're a celebrity who's claiming that you've been defamed, a public figure, the burden is even greater and more difficult. Now, for Johnny Depp, don't forget, before this trial ever happened, there was a trial over in the UK. Johnny lost that case. And different system of justice, a judge, one person made the decision, for whatever that's worth. But in that case that Johnny lost, the burden was on the other side, because it's the UK. Their system is a little backwards. Anyhow, so he comes into the trial here in the United States, public figure suing for defamation after having lost a similar case, not the same case, but a similar case over in the UK. And what we witnessed is what I'm referring to as the miracle in Fairfax. To completely turn that thing around, to win, to actually win. And I'll be honest, the first time I looked at this case, I said, okay, I'm open-minded and all, but I just know as an attorney, what a mountain you had to climb here. And it was done. So how exactly was this case won? Well, you've got a great team of attorneys who are bringing it, are figuring out who should testify, how they should testify, what questions we should ask, how we should dress, how we should make the arguments, everything from start to finish. So, again, in these next 2 nights right here on Closing Arguments, we're going to take an in-depth look at Johnny Depp's legal team. Chanley Painter, Court TV legal correspondent, who was there for the whole trial from start to finish, sat down with Camille Vasquez and some other members of the team. Let's take a look.
Who is Camille Vasquez?
Who is Camille Vasquez?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. You know, I think what you see is what you get. My parents have 2 girls. I am an aunt. I am a friend and a colleague. I was pretty much told that I was going to be a lawyer. I guess I was a pretty mouthy child, and I had opinions about a lot of things, and I expressed them passionately.
Who is Jessica Myers?
I am a woman who grew up in Massachusetts. I knew from a very young age I wanted to be an attorney. In high school, I read To Kill a Mockingbird and was sort of sold on advocating for people.
So tell me about yourself.
Well, I grew up in California, grew up in Sacramento.
Is this what you've always wanted to do?
Be a lawyer? No. I wound up in law school because I couldn't think of what else to do with my life. I had no real plan coming out of college, but I seemed to have a certain aptitude for law. I'm naturally argumentative.
How did you come to even represent Johnny Depp?
We were handling a couple litigations out of California, so I was staffed on those cases. And at that time, I was one of the few women on the team. And I think that being a woman helped me forge a relationship with Johnny that maybe some of the male partners didn't have. And I was able to learn probably more about him than he knows about himself, as I say to him sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually originally brought into the case because Ms. Heard had filed, I believe it was her second demur, which, is a motion to dismiss. And this was, I think, probably her strongest one. It was making the argument that the statements were not defamatory because they never mentioned Johnny. So I was brought in to brief that.
I wasn't immediately involved in that, but pretty quickly things began to spiral and they needed more hands on the team. So Camille said, want to jump on board? And I said, fine.
We believed in Johnny, first and foremost. So we believed in him, we believed in our case strategy, and we believed in one another. We were really confident in our abilities to present this case in the most effective, truthful, and passionate way that we could. I think in our case here in the US, we really focused on the big lies, not every single lie, and exposing her to be untruthful.
In preparation for this trial, what was your team's game plan in taking on this case?
We figured if he could tell his story, and once and for all, after 6 years, he can deny these allegations outright, and he can tell the story and give the jury, help give the jury a reason why she would make this up. We thought that there was really a very small chance he could lose.
The beautiful thing about this team is I think we very quickly, everyone is incredibly talented, but people have their strengths, right? And so I think we sort of recognize what those strengths were.
No one had ever, in 5 decades, no one had ever accused Johnny Depp of being abusive of any kind with a woman. That's why it was such a jolt. A false allegation can devastate a career, and it can devastate a family. And the evidence will show that Ms. Heard's false allegations had a significant impact on Mr. Depp's family and his ability to work in the profession he loved.
We started talking about who was going to do what probably a week before, as we were writing the opening statement. I remember as a team, we collectively told Ben that we thought the opening needed to be split, where he would introduce Johnny, and then the person that was going to go after Amber was going to be the person that was going to do that from the beginning.
Right.
In this trial, Ms. Heard will undoubtedly present photos that supposedly show injuries she sustained as a result of the claimed abuse by Mr. Depp. Here's what you should keep in mind when you see these photographs. First, the evidence and expert testimony from a forensic pathologist, a doctor, will show that the injuries reflected in these photographs are not consistent with the brutal allegations of abuse Ms. Heard has alleged. You will not see a single photograph of the vast majority of the abuse alleged by Ms. Heard. Not one. And there is not a single photograph or video showing Mr. Depp becoming physically violent towards Ms. Heard.
As a lawyer, you have to have a critical eye towards the evidence, because if you just believe your client blindly, you're doing a disservice, because you have to anticipate that someone may not believe him or her, and so you have to be able to figure out a way to convince that person that your client's telling the truth.
And we will continue watching more of Chanley's interview, but we've got a special guest ourselves tonight. Joining us in Washington, D.C., trial attorney partner with Brown Rudnick and the lead attorney who represented Johnny Depp during his defamation case, Ben Chew, back with us. Ben, great to see you. Thanks for coming aboard tonight.
You're most welcome, Benny. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me again.
So let's go here. It's something that Camille said. We believed in Johnny. When did you first meet Johnny Depp, and what did you have any preconceived ideas about Johnny Depp before you got to know him?
I was introduced to Johnny by a mutual friend, another attorney, and I really didn't have any preconceived notions about Johnny other than that he was somewhat of a mysterious figure. He was a great actor, I knew that. But he really was very private. So until this, ironically, he really had been not reclusive, but he was someone who really valued his private life, and he kept his family life quiet.
And as you mentioned, until this, where everything spilled out into the courtroom. We've got a lot to get to this hour, so Ben Chew is going to stay with us as we continue to get an inside look at Johnny Depp's legal team. Also, folks, coming up next hour. What a moment outside the courthouse in Fairfax County, Virginia. Camille Vasquez and Ben Chew after Johnny Depp won his defamation case. Tonight we're getting an inside look at Johnny Depp's legal team. And still with me, Ben Chew. Ben, how daunting was it to prepare for this case? The amount of detail, the amount of years, and all of this, the evidence and the witnesses.
Vinny, we filed the case on March 1, 2019, and normally under Virginia state procedure, in Fairfax anyway, you generally get a trial within 1 year of filing the complaint. But of course, everybody was hit with COVID, including Fairfax County, and that entailed at least 2 continuances of the trial date. So what would have been frenzied preparation of discovery while fighting off 4 or 5 separate sets of dispositive motions would have been condensed into that period. But as it happened, it ended up, we tried the case about 3 years later. The practical effect of that was there were a lot more depositions. I think Ms. Heard noticed about 80 depositions. She had some funding from insurance companies that provided a war chest that we really didn't have. But we responded as we needed to.
And as you prepare for this case, at what point do you start seeing and hearing the evidence, whether it's witnesses, depositions? Are you feeling any sense of confidence?
We always had confidence in Johnny. As Camille referred to in her interview with Chanley, we had represented Johnny on a couple of other cases and gotten to know him very well. And we had first heard the story of his relationship with Amber Heard before we even contemplated the lawsuit. So we were comfortable with Johnny and that he was telling the truth. But the witnesses, you have to see as they come up. And more witnesses came forward, people who really were disinterested. They had no reason to support Johnny, but they came forward and they told very credible stories that supported Johnny's narrative. Their life played out in public, so a lot of people saw what was going on.
Unbelievable. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see another trial quite like this one. Benchu with us the whole hour. Shanley Painter sat down with other members of the team, Camille Vasquez, Jessica Myers, Samuel Amanes. Let's take a look at more of her interview as she gets into some more of the details of some of these witnesses.
Okay, let's talk about the testimony. First, Depp's side. You guys, other than your client, which witnesses were the most important for your case?
I think all of them played such a key role. There were so many people that wanted to testify in this case. They felt compelled to tell the truth. And so, we started with Christy Dombrowski, Johnny's sister. And we did that again on purpose because jury trials are your opportunity to tell a story, a persuasive one, but a story nonetheless. And so we started from the beginning, which was Johnny's sister. Who is Johnny Depp? Who was Johnny Depp before he became the person that we all know as Johnny Depp?
How, if at all, did Johnny react when his mother would hit him?
He was a typical little boy where if it hurt, he would cry. That was it. I mean, for the most part, he just wanted to get away from it.
It was about giving a why to certain members of that jury. Why would this person make up these allegations? And I think by Christy sharing a little bit about their childhood and Johnny's reaction to the abuse that they both sustained, started to paint a picture of who this person was many years later when he met Miss Heard and they had conflict.
Tell me about your role that you played during the trial.
I was involved in a lot of the trial preparation, so drafting the motions in limine, arguing a lot of those. I took on several trial witnesses, including Gina Deuters.
That was sort of a moment in the trial that really blew up on social media, especially. She starts her testimony, she's about 15 minutes in, and then there's this sidebar out of nowhere.
You've been watching, so you have seen parts of this trial?
Yeah.
Okay, and witness testimonies?
Yeah, I've seen clips of...
You've seen it, thanks. All right, does anybody have any follow-up questions?
Ms. Deuters, have you been watching?
It doesn't matter, she's been watching clips of witness testimony. All right, you're excused, ma'am. You can have your excuse.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was conducting Gina's direct examination, and somebody in the gallery, a member of Miss Heard's party in the gallery, passed up to one of her attorneys a phone with screenshots of what appeared to be Gina Deuters posting on social media about the trial. What actually happened, ultimately it turned out, was that Gina had seen a couple of clips, a couple of isolated clips, just because people had been sending her clips on social media. But she hadn't been seeking it out, and she hadn't actually been watching any significant amount of it. And the apparent social media posts had actually been from the year prior.
Dr. Shannon Curry, she was almost a crowd favorite. You could tell she connected with this jury. How important was Dr. Curry's findings and conclusions to your case?
As a result of the work that you performed, did you form any opinions with respect to Ms. Heard?
I did.
What were those opinions?
The results of Ms. Heard's evaluation supported 2 diagnoses, borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder.
Having a psychologist say, this is what IPV looks like, this is what PTSD looks like, this is what it doesn't look like, was going to be persuasive.
There was one witness that you guys put forth early on, the marriage counselor.
With Ms. Heard, he was triggered, and they engaged in what I saw as mutual abuse.
That was her opinion. That doesn't mean that she was saying that there was mutual physical violence on both sides. Again, no witness came forward and said, I saw Johnny Depp physically abuse Ms. Heard with my own eyes.
Any trial, you're going to have some testimony that you love and some testimony that you hate. And there's never going to be a trial when you don't end at least one day of it going, oh no, that was bad. And that was the case here. And I think we put on enough evidence showing that Johnny Depp has a lot of good qualities, is fundamentally decent, is fundamentally nonviolent, that ultimately that comment, I don't think, made much difference.
All right, when we come back, we're going to take a look at Johnny Depp's testimony through the eyes of his legal team. Ben Chu is with us, and of course, Chanley sat down with the rest of the team. We'll be right back.